Chi works quite closely with Avid, Pro Tools, and the accessibility extension Flo Tools. So he's going to be telling us all about that this evening. So please just give a nice warm welcome to Chi Kim.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity. So I'm just going to share my screen quick. Let's see. All right.
Application. The Zoom thumbnail. This optimizes performance for full screen video sharing. Zoom. Microsoft PowerPoint.
All right. Cool. Alex, can you see?
We can see your slides.
Previous slide. Slide 1.
All right. Cool.
Voiceover is a little loud.
Oh, you have a voiceover coming up?
Yeah. So
previous slide. Click on player.
Let's see.
Click on player. Microsoft PowerPoint.
But I'll
PowerPoint.
Use,
Click on Zoom.us.
I'll
Finder. Microsoft PowerPoint. Click on player. Zoom.us.
I'll unshare for a second.
Okay, that's great. And then maybe you could bring voiceover just down very, very slightly more. Chi, that would be great.
All right, let's see. All right, there you go. Now you should hear voiceover. Right, you don't hear voiceover, correct?
No, it's gone, unfortunately.
All right, good, awesome. That's why we want to do it. All right, go. All right. Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Alex. This is great. I've been listening on and off, and there have been a lot of good stuff said and discussed, and I'm very excited to share my thoughts. And unfortunately, you guys already talked about all my stuff. so it will be repeated, but I'll reiterate some of the stuff, my thoughts, and will be good summary, I guess. My name is Chi Kim. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, in US, and I'm an associate professor at Berklee College of Music, and I lead Assistive Technology Lab for visually impaired and blind students. So I have a little bit of introduction about me. So I was born in Korea, and I was fairly young. When I was fairly young, I got exposed to computers, programming, and synthesizer, those kind of thing. I started, my first synthesizer was Kurzweil 2000 when I was 12. And I was very excited, like playing with the different sounds and messing with the different sounds. And fairly soon I was like, oh, I wonder, like, instead of making one single patch, like, can I like use it to make multiple sounds, coming out multiple sounds at once, and those kind of things. Then I got into sequencing, so I use a cakewalk in DOS. So I play with that. And what's interesting was when I was, I was 12, and I heard about this cakewalk through the internet. I guess it was internet, even though it was dial-up. So then I got the program, and then I got a book from the library, and like a little kid, I was able to read the book from the top to bottom, and I was able to follow the instruction and start being able to create music on DOS cakewalk. And I think that was like interesting thing because in DOS we don't have a lot of like UI problem. A lot of it is like text-based, and a lot of it is just like console kind of thing. So it wasn't too much problem trying to follow stuff. But later, when I get into Windows and the UI started, more graphic user interfaces started popping up. And even though it's exactly same company program, which is rebranded as a Sonar, then we needed a extension, cake talking, in order to use those kind of software. And I used the Cakewalk Sonar to do more like audio production in Windows side. Yeah, so I was able to go to Berklee, and but the problem was a lot of things that Berklee was using was not accessible. So I had to struggle quite a bit in the beginning to try to find out how to tackle assignments and how to you know, do the same thing that my sighted peer was asked. So I had to, ask a lot of people around the internet and exchange emails. Back then we didn't have a WhatsApp, so it was a lot of based on the emails. So, but a lot of people donated their time and guide me through the process, and I was able to do a lot of um, tasks that I was assigned to, and you know that's great story. But unfortunately, like I think a lot of people who really want to start into music technology are not as smooth as maybe I went the process that I went through, and I think that's a very important uh, thing for us to realize. And I think what I want to briefly talk about is disability. And even though we are talking about accessibility, um, I want to like zoom out a little bit and talk about really what is disability. And according to World Health Organization, the disability uh, happens when there's an interaction between person with a health condition and the personal environment and the personal factors. So personal factor might be like negative attitudes toward people with a disability or misassumption about people with a disability and physical environmental access or digital access. So I have a picture here. Hopefully you guys can see it. Some of you. So I have a picture here, wheelchair user at the bottom of the stairs. And the question now is, this person experience disability because the person is in a wheelchair, or is this person experience a disability because of the stairs? And this question is about social model versus medical model in disability studies. So social model states that disability, people experience disability when there's an environment barrier exists. And the medical model suggests that people experience disability when because of they have a medical condition. And I think it's something to think about for us to um, define what disability is and why there are barriers. So, so I was thinking about this keynote, and I was like, oh, why do we talk about accessibility, right? And then I was thinking maybe we need to talk about accessibility to create more opportunity for people to have a success. So what it means to be success. So I thought about a few things and I come up with a few ideas. So obviously talent, passion and motivation, and tools, financial resources, training to develop skills, opportunity, people, and luck. Of course, music industry needs some of luck, right? um, and when you really think about these factors, I can divide them into two. What like some things are internal, and but a lot of that are external. For example, like talent and motivation, those are internal. We have control over. But a lot of things that are external factors, such as people who could see the potential and understand what we can do and give us job and gigs and opportunity where things are accessible so people not just being able to gig but also able to promote your music in different platform social media. So those social media are not accessible, then we are losing some of the exposure opportunity. And training for skills, obviously, a lot of the training out there nowadays. People look up YouTube and they just learn a lot of things through the videos, but a lot of times work for us. So there are disadvantages in the training side. And financial resources at the top of the program. Someone mentioned Jaws is a screenreader for the millionaires, and I totally agree. And I remember when I bought my first smartphone, I had to get a mobile speak, which I think it was like, if not same as expensive as the phone itself or more. So there's some financial barrier. And tools themselves, a lot of tools are not accessible, even though we made a great stride right now. Things are accessible. before we only had one choice of DAW sonar, but now we have a great option: Logic, Pro Tool, Reaper, Samplitude, and now we can finally get into DAW fight. We can start arguing about, oh, which is better DAW. Decided people have been doing for ages. Now we can do that too, which is a great thing. So even though we made a great stride, I think we have a lot more to go. So, to tackle those external factors, so Assistive Music Technology Lab is trying to remove some of the barriers. So the the goal of the Berklee mission is to educate, train, and develop students to excel in music as a career. And the Assistive Technology Lab goal is to incorporate um, people with a visual impairment into full experience of Berklee so they can perform and create music at the highest level. So how do we do that? So here are some of the things that we do at Berklee. So teach the essential tools such as digital audio workstation and music notation software, as well as Braille music. And we provide dedicated lab spaces and workstation and staff so students can come and do their assignments and do their project. And we convert inaccessible material into accessible materials for class resources. And we advise and provide resources for faculty and staff and spread awareness and promote accessibility campus-wide and beyond. And we also provide consultation outside the college as well, and promote collaboration with the different organization and school and foster innovation. So some of the things that you guys might be familiar with, the Flo tool is one example. Also, I developed the VOCR, which is optical recognition you can use to take a screenshot and use keyboard to navigate the result of the optical character recognition and being able to click things with the mouse. I'm sorry, with the keyboard. Um, and also, we recently collaborated with Avid to make Sibelius music notation software much more accessible. And last but not least, we make other resources publicly available, such as if you go to ptaccess.github, github.io, there's many hours of tutorials for screen reader users who like to learn Pro Tools. And we have a sibaccess.github.io, which has tutorials specifically for Sibelius users who use screen reader. So some of those things we develop and make it available for free to tackle some of the financial barriers out there. All right. So I'm gonna play a little bit of video clip of my students working in the lab. So I thought about making into audio described video, but it was a kind of a distracting um, because it's just a lot of music. So I'll just tell you what's on it for people who cannot see. So there are a lot of footage of people working in the lab, using computer, learning Braille music, picture of people jamming in the studios, and just general like music creation um, uh, footage and jam kind of sessions. So all those music are produced and made by students, and hope you enjoy it. So it's a short video, so hopefully you guys can hear it. Oops.
you leave me? Take my body, take my body.
All right, cool. So hopefully you were able to hear that and see. Um, so let's talk about, so that's a story about our lab. Let's talk about Flo Tool. So I, you guys probably had some opportunity to play with the Pro Tool with the Flo Tools. And so I won't demonstrate here for the time's sake, but I'll talk about a little bit of the design process and how it come about. So Pro Tool is basically enhanced workflow for Pro Tool users with a visual impairment. So we are talking about usability really. Flow Tool doesn't make Pro Tool more accessible or anything like that, but it's all about usability. So when I started teaching Pro Tool back in like 2012, um, students were uh, a lot of them were like very frustrated because you know it's very complex program first of all, and to back off why we teach Pro Tool is because of Berklee. Everybody, regardless of your major, even if you're a music business major, you are a songwriting major, you have to learn a DAW, and Pro Tool was a choice of the DAW for at Berklee. So we started teaching Pro Tools back in 2012, and when students started to use those things, students had a very wide range of ability. Some students had even problem with the typing, and some students had a great um, skills with the computer. They can do a lot of things. So there was a wide range of ability. But then when you throw students having who doesn't have a lot of technology exposure, throw them into the learning Pro Tool, that creates a lot of stress and a lot of I think anxiety. I think so. I was thinking, oh, what? So how can we make this better? So one of my students, Rocco Fiorentino, and I took a semester to design a very basic things to tackle the issues that students were having. So we made few scripts so that students can retrieve information they need quickly. So you can use screen reader to locate different information. You can go there and look at it. You can navigate to different parts of the screen. You can do all that. But the problem is a lot of times it's not fast enough. It's not efficient enough. You have so many things to track off. Is my track selected? Is my timeline selected? Is where I selected has a clips inside? A lot of things that you have to keep track of. So I thought, well, if we use automation, we can have computer to do those kind of thing much better for students and free some head space so students can focusing on their artistry and the performance and the fun part of it instead of like worrying about user interface and struggle. So that was the motivation, pure frustration. And I think a lot of times that's where the innovation comes, right? Of frustration and the problem, right? And we started with that as our motivation. Um, then we made a prototype, and we had a summer break, and Rocco, who was one of my students who helped me to create this prototype, called me during the break, and he was like, "Chi, I tried to show this to Slough, and Slough, some of you might know, who really started this Pro Tool accessibility with Avid, and he's a champion of Pro Tool accessibility. Anyways, so Rocco tried to show our quote prototype quote to Slough, and he was like, "Oh, I think I broke his studio." And I was like, "What do you mean you broke his studio?" And he's like, "I tried to show him this thing, and now his Pro Tool doesn't work properly." So I talked to got into touch with Slough, and we did troubleshooting, and Slough saw the potential, and he was very intrigued. So we team up with Slough to get his expertise and get his opinions about things. So we started to team up with Slough, Rocco, and me, and trying to further develop this Flo Tool. And that's how we got it really took off the whole project. Just three of us. Um, and then we released the Flow tool with we started prototype has like around like 10 macros, but when we released it had like 70-ish macro. Now we have hundreds of macros now. So some of the interestingly, um, I collected some of the data from Flow tool usage. So Keyboard Maestro is a automation tool that we use to talk. We use to launch some of the scripts that we created to interface with the Pro Tool. And Keyboard Maestro has some of the analytics capability. So we collected some of the data and see how people use Flow Tool. And here are some of the popular commands. So I gave them score. So higher number is the more popular, well used command. So solo is the most popular command apparently, has a score of 2.0, and changing the volume 1.6, selecting track 1.05, and then we have a various timeline selection like start and length. What's interesting is that people like to specify where to start, and from there they like to specify length instead of endpoint. So if you want to select from bar 9 through bar 16, they will specify bar 9, and instead of specifying endpoint as bar 17, they rather specify 8 bars, which I thought interesting insight. Then we have a pan control and the record enable feature, and the mute, insert, peak meter, and playlist features, which is also known as takes in other DAW, and inputs, outputs, and select presets, and bypass plugin. So those are like most widely used commands. Obviously, we have other fancy features like a plugin monitor, where Flow Tool watches a plugin, and whenever parameter changes through the control surface, it reads out the value of the plugin. And we have similar to Reaper, we have a peak watcher, so you can instantly see which track has clips and things like that. But those the ones that I listed are most popular commands. And like I said, those commands, you don't need Flow Tool to access those features, but what Flow Tool does is make it much easier or much faster to access those features, so you don't have to use the voice over cursor, interact and stop interact, and go find the control and read the value. Whereas a flow tool, you just hit a shortcut and bam, you know how many tracks are soloed. You can find out which ones are muted. You can easily deselect everything. You can easily unsolo everything, and so on. So those are some of the commands that we have. Um, oops. So let's. So Alex asked me about uh, what might be the future direction for music technology industry. Um, and I think I don't have this crystal ball, but at least I know what I want it to go, the direction I would like to go. So I will share some of my thoughts here. So we talked about usability. So, and a lot of times when people are talking about accessibility, sometimes people talk about exposing all the controls to the accessibility API. Well, I think nowadays we passed that, um, even though a lot of software lacks those kind of a capability. But I think we have to move on and beyond just exposing controls and uh, have the information available. And we have to focusing on the usability. So being able to access effectively, efficiently, and with satisfaction. So those keywords, effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction, comes from the definition of usability by ISO. And I think we really should consider the usability when you develop accessible products. So, and here are some of my recommendation. And this is geared towards more screen reader users, but I think it can be applied for other assistive technology as well. So it it should be accessible out of the box. No add-ons or no extra purchase. We talked about that in other presentation before. That creates an extra barrier, financial barrier. And it has to be intuitive and easy to learn. We talked about training side of it. If you are just starting out and if you have no idea about this software, you should be able to just pick it up and open it with screen reader and navigate, and it should make sense in a way so that they can explore and learn at least basic things, and later they can pick up more advanced stuff through the community. But I think basic um, start getting started part, I think it has to be pretty easy to learn and intuitive. Um, and the problem is sometimes people who start doesn't have some of the inside scoop, right? So a lot of times stories will be like, oh, in such DAW, this feature is not accessible. And some expert or power user will come along and say, oh, actually, if you do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and it will be accessible. And and those kind of a power user tip or workaround is great. It's there, so we can use it. But the usability is it's not there. So we don't need, like, people don't have to have this inside scoop about hack around and work around when you use certain software. Um, and customizable is another big thing. So for example, I've advocated for customizable keyboard shortcut for a while on Pro Tool. Now we finally have it. So people who you can throw a bunch of features that are not mapped to shortcut. So people can even assign shortcuts to access certain feature much easier. And you can reassign shortcuts. So if you are having problem pressing 5 keys at once, you have a motor skills challenges, then you can customize those shortcuts to make it easier for you to use. So customizability is a big thing. And another couple of more things that I have here is more technical side, but consistent and concise label controls. So we have to have all the names of the control so you know what it is. You have to know the value of the control, and you have to know the role of the control so you know what they're for. Um, Also, concise is very important because in screen reader users, we consume a lot of information through audio, and the labels it's not concise. And if we have to um, read them, even though we can interrupt, but if things are not concisely labeled, we tend to spend more time trying to look for information, exact information we need. So conciseness is very important. And example might be in Sibelius, we made it so that you can change the verbosity of the how music is described. So there are a lot of information when you want to describe a single note. There's a duration, there's a pitch, there is location. Um, so you can customize all those information so that it makes most sense for you. So verbosity is going to be another huge thing for a lot of people. Um, and organization of the control is very important. So when you use plugin, sometimes has a different modules, and sometimes like input output control, it has a EQ section, it has a compressor section, but sometimes like EQ section controls are mixed in, intermingled with the compressed section, or input output section is intermingled with the compressed section. And for us to navigate those kind of order is very confusing. So if you develop plugins or if you develop software, make sure your controls are grouped and organized very well so people can locate easily. And lastly, keyboard navigation and the shortcut is very important too. So when you tab around to focusing onto the different controls, make sure the order makes sense. And also keyboard shortcut so that a lot of features have keyboard shortcut attached to it, or at least be able to assign shortcut to different features, especially the ones that you have to use mouse. So those are some of the thoughts I have about what accessible technology should be. Um, so here are a couple of more thoughts I jot down while I was listening to different people presentation. So we talked about a lot of established companies like Avid, Native Instruments, Arturia, but those are like really big companies that have a lot of resources, and they started incorporating accessibility. But there are a lot of independent developers that doesn't know anything about it. It's accessibility is not even in their radar. And I thought it will be good for us to advocate to have any computer science or coding program to expose the people who learn those technology to have exposure to accessibility. I think that's a very important part of it. So all the computer science programs should have accessibility exposed to their students throughout their program. It can't be just one class and do the check marks. I think it has to be exposed throughout the program on and off. And we talked about some of the things that might be able to use to make it more easier to use or fun to use is that we can utilize some of the machine learning, which is really taking off. And there are a lot of plugins now started using machine learning to help us to at least get it started, get the starting points. And then we can start from there and start modify stuff to make it even better. So things like a repetitive task, things like setting the level. Jace talked about that, where console soft console 1 have that capability, which is a great thing. I love to see that. Um, and creating phase automatically, that makes most sense. Um, Maybe setting the volume automatically to a like a decent level, so you don't have to like just chase around the different volume and mix it. You can start from there. That doesn't mean you have to keep it, right? So at least it give you the starting point and help you get started. And EQ curves, for example, if you start the EQ and sweep around the frequency too much, they can just start with the suggested frequency curve, and they can just focusing on the gain. So an isotope, I think that they started doing those kind of technique, and I think it's very interesting. And this kind of thing will make, I think, those product more enjoyable. And I think we talked about, a lot of people talked about fun, uh, and enjoyability is, I think, machine learning might be able to help us to get there a little bit. And another thought I had while listening to some of the points made was, a lot of academic research stops after the research. A lot of times it doesn't get into the market or go into the manufacturing process. And I think it might be good to partner with the companies that already have those kind of a manufacturing, or they already have those hardware, and we can research those concepts and bring them those concepts, being able to incorporate into already developed product or control surface or whatever keyboard, whatever they already have. We can bring those ideas, research with them, partner with them, and then whatever we get the ideas from research, we can ask them to incorporate, and they can decide to incorporate. And I see the, you know, sometimes advantage of and disadvantage, because then you can't do the open source, and then but you can you don't have a full control over everything. But sometimes getting into the mass market, I think, is very important. So I think research is important too, but I think also getting things in hands of people who will benefit is also important. So partnering with a already existing product, a company, might be interesting venue to pursue into. So those are some of the thoughts I have while listening to some of the great points. And a lot of things I mentioned are already talked about, and I realized has been more of a summary or a recap, but hopefully it was helpful for everybody. And I'm very excited to be here and learn about what other people are doing and how this industry is moving forward. And I'm very optimistic, and I'm very thrilled to be here. And thank you so much for the opportunity. And I have I'm not sure if, oh, actually, let me go back to where I started. So I'm going to briefly recap what we need to make someone to be successful. So talent, passion and motivation, tools, financial resources, training to develop skills, opportunity, people, and luck. And I think if you're not even tech person, there are a lot of areas where you can partner with us as an ally and break down those barriers from in these categories. And I hope this symposium could forge those connections and tackle wider range of barriers, not just tech tool. So thank you. And I guess if we have time for a question, I'll take question.
Thanks so much, Chi-Kim. We do have time for questions, so I'll open it out to the audience. Does anyone have anything they'd like to ask Chi about his work? or anybody online as well. Let me just double check my my questions on my phone. Is anyone coming? Okay, not on Zoom yet. No, that's no problem. Well, Chi, I was really fascinated by what you were saying about usability and accessibility, and it seemed as though you were viewing Flo Tools almost as a usability tool rather than an accessibility tool. Is that fair to say?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, great stuff. So it's something that we've kind of wrestled with, this idea of usability and accessibility, and it almost seems like the two are interwoven in some way, I think, and it's sometimes quite hard to separate the two. But a lot of what you're saying about the future really, what it really resonated for me, it all really seems like good design practice, good user experience design, good usability. And I was wondering about the role of community in that particular element of Flo Tools. So when you were designing Flo Tools, did you really approach that as an expert based on your own workflow, what you felt was usable and what wasn't, or did you bring on feedback from the community? And yeah, could you talk a little bit about that for us, please?
Yeah, I think the people who were involved was obviously experts, Slough and me, and one of my students. So we had an idea of what was challenging. But then we had a feedback from my students who never used a Pro Tool before, never used any DAW. So we had some insight from my students about their challenges and what makes it frustrating when you use DAW.
Sure.
So there was some definitely feedback from different variation of ability, and I think that that's very important for someone who wants to develop this user experience research. I think has to be factored into when you design something like this.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chi. We've got a question from Nick online. He was asking about the accessibility of the hardware interfaces that Avid makes. Have you been involved in any conversations with Avid regarding that side of their products portfolio?
Yeah, so I'm not too involved with the Avid, but there are about hardware specifically. But definitely there are people who are pushing and having conversation about their hardware. And a lot of people, you might know Ed Gray, who works at Avid and who's also happened to be visually impaired. And he's really trying to change their culture. So when you design a product, things have to be considered. The accessibility and usability has to be in consideration.
Sure.
But as you know, Avid is a big company, and changing the culture is a hard thing. And we do our best, and hopefully we'll make some stride in the hardware front as well. But yeah, there are definitely conversation around those hardware as well.
That's great. Thanks, Chi. Any more questions from the room? So Scott, let me come over with the microphone. There we go.
Hello, Professor. It's Mr. Chesworth.
Hello, Scott.
Just two quick questions for you, man. I read something recently about Pro Tools getting an API. Is that accurate, and does that change things for Flo Tools potentially?
Yes. So I'm not sure how much I can talk about it, but since I already know, you already talked about it. So no, I've been asking people to Pro Tool to develop some kind of API so that people can, not just a Flo Tool, but anybody who are into automation can take advantage of those kind of things. And there is something called SoundFlow, and that is some kind of a automation tool that people can use scripting and things like that. So there are some things already there, but what I want to see is like SoundFlow is an external automation tool. It's not part of the Pro Tool. But what I want to really see is a really API that programmers can use directly interact with the Pro Tools.
Yeah.
And there are definitely conversation in Pro Tool developers.
Something sort of similar to what Reaper's got then, right? Like,
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why you guys have a really great experience for Reaper users, because
Yeah.
you guys directly talk to Reaper instead of layers of accessibility API.
Just one more super quick question. You gave us a run through of the 3 most used macros. What's the 3 least used? Just out of interest.
I don't have the list right now,
Okay.
but I can get back to you. But that's an interesting question. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
really
So,
surprised
no-
that soloing tracks was the most common. So I'm just kind of interested.
And another thing interesting is that I was going through, and panning to the right is twice more likely than panning to the left for some reason.
Are you sure you don't need to
Which I
restart
thought,
your
like-
data collection thing? Cool, good talk, man. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah.
Great stuff. Any more questions at all? James, what would you like to ask?
Hey, Chi, thank you so much for a great keynote. So you gave us a brief rundown at the start of the stuff that you're doing at Berklee, with your education program. I think there's quite a lot of folks here who are sort of either students or staff or researchers. Have you got any good strategies for, doing education and also like communicating with universities to get resources and support?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, education institution is a big thing, right? And it really need to change the culture of the university. It's not like one person from accessibility resources can take on this thing. And I think the best strategy we found is talk to different department, and you will find someone who is interested in accessibility, and make a team out of those people and have them to change their peers, their coworkers, and turn them into accessibility champions. And sometimes that I find it work, and especially if you can involve someone in the leadership is a probably best choice, because if someone wants to do accessibility, but then leadership doesn't give resources for the people, then that person doesn't have a lot of resources. So I think involving the leadership is very important, and finding your allies across the different campuses and build a team to forge and champion your accessibility. I think that's the key.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Yep.
That's great stuff. And we've got a question from Maya as well, so I'll just pass you the mic. There you go.
Hi, my question is not so much connected to Flo Tools itself, but more of the Pro Tools and contacting with Avid, because I've learned Pro Tools in my school, and we have this problem. This is kind of long story because it's one detail. It can be changed, I think, and it can improve accessibility. And I was wondering if you recommend some specific person that we can contact to ask if it's possible even, or maybe you can share your.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, Alex has my email, so
I do,
Okay.
you can ask Alex to.
Of course, and I
Yeah.
will explain.
I'll yeah. Mhm.
No, maybe
Yeah, definitely.
maybe through the email, but it's kind of connected with Pro Tools talking to voiceover and backwards. So I have some questions about
Yeah,
that. So
yeah, definitely.
If I am allowed, I will contact you about it.
Yep.
That's great. Yeah, I'll put you guys in
Of
touch.
course.
There's no problem at all. Great stuff. Okay, well, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you again, Chi, for such a fantastic keynote and for giving us your time today. So, yeah, let's just give Chi a nice warm round of applause.
Thank you so much, everybody.